Sue walked into the room and sat down across the table from Jennifer, who slid a cup of coffee across to her. In a voice slightly raised above the hubbub in the room, Jen says, "White and one, wasn't it?" "You remembered, Jen, thanks. And thank you for agreeing to see me." "No sweat, ex-boss." The two girls exchanged news of things at Sue's old office before Jen dragged the conversation to the reason they were both here. "So, care to explain what happened, boss?" "Where did we get to last time?" "Well, you just explained how you got back from John Stickner's place and found Early waiting for you." "That's right. Well, he went out and I made a big mistake. I got drunk. You know how aggressive I get when I'm drunk. By the time Early got back, I was steaming. I'd gone back to feeling that I'd done nothing wrong and was really upset that Early didn't understand. Not only that, but I was upset that I was feeling that he now had some sort of power over me. Later, I realized that he didn't want me to grovel, but I'd lost all my logic abilities at the time. "So what happened?" Susan looked embarrassed but plunged on. "Well, I attacked him verbally. I went straight to his manhood, told him he was a poor lover, that I faked all my responses and John was a better lover, and so on. It was nonsense, of course. John was terrible. Have you ever heard your mouth running off with what you know are cruel and hurtful things but can't stop yourself?" "Every 28 days, Sue." "Yeah, right. Exactly like that. Well, Early tried to walk away, but I just followed him, hammering him. God, I am so embarrassed about it now. If I could have my time over again, I would just put that bottle down. Finally, Early asked me to leave, and I said gladly, and picked up my car keys. Early took them off me, said I was too drunk to drive. Well, what choice did I have? I called John to come and pick me up. Wasn't that a bit unwise, Sue?" "You're telling me." "I tried to repair a bit of the damage until John got there, but Early just wouldn't listen. In frustration, I'm afraid I attacked him some more. My poor darling just sat there like a whipped puppy. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did." "Why, what happened then?" "When John got there, I suppose he just couldn't help himself. He had to upset Early further, you know, sneered at him, greeted him with, 'This must be your loser husband,' and such. I tried to stop him, but I was too late. Early went for him, but I grabbed a hold of his legs and told John to get out. He got out all right, moved incredibly fast through the door. I ran out after him." "What happened then?" "Well, I went to John's place and cried on his shoulder all night. The next day, I drove over to our place. Early wasn't there, so I went in to get some clothes, but there were none there. I looked out the window and there was all my stuff on the back lawn. He'd just opened the window and tossed it all out. I knew then that my marriage was over. It was such un-Early-like behavior. Then I remembered how John and I'd treated him the night before. I must have cried for an hour. And then I gathered up my clothes, got dressed, and went to work. As soon as I got there, we had the first half of this conversation. Then you got the call that I was wanted on the top floor, remember? I knew that after landing Melrose, this was it. Promotion and glory awaited. Well, as you know, that lasted 5 minutes. I should have known things weren't right when a security guard ushered me into HR. Early must have been up early that day. He interrupted the morning partners meeting. I had no idea he'd recorded my confession. Yeah, I heard about that. Rumor was that they were fairly harsh. That's putting it mildly. They'd already terminated John and took his company car and sell off him. That's why he couldn't ring and warn me. Once HR told me I was terminated as well, the security guard escorted me to my office and watched while I cleared it. Oh, Jenny, you'll never know how humiliating that was. I heard about it when I got back. What did you do then? I went back to John's place and we both got drunk that time. At some stage, I remember thinking, why not? John owned a huge house and was obviously rich. Sure, he was 20 years older than me, but why shouldn't I use the opportunity to improve my situation a bit? I think my logic was this. I'd thrown Early away for a few days with John, so I'd better make it all worthwhile. Besides that, it would upset Early, and I wasn't feeling particularly generous to him at the time. The unwise things you do when you're drunk. Is that when you... Yes. That's when I did something really unwise. I made a terrible choice with John in the pool. He had asked before about something inappropriate, but I'd refused. Early had never done that, so I wasn't about to let John either. Well, I suppose I was in a difficult mood. You didn't? I did, right there in the pool. It was very uncomfortable. We decided to ring early during this moment. I realize now that was the second most unwise thing I have ever done in my life. Looking back, I really believe that the marriage was salvageable until that conversation. Let's just say that Early didn't take it very well. He must have been really hurt. What did he say? I still shudder to think of the pain I caused. He didn't answer the home phone, of course, so I rang his cell. John told Early some very inappropriate things about what we were doing. I pretended to make sounds. Then Early asked to speak to me. He asked me a question that I couldn't answer. He asked me, "Apart from visiting your work this morning, what have I done to deserve last weekend and today?" Well, as I said, I couldn't answer, could I? Even drunk, I realized that this was all completely my fault. Then he said something really chilling. He said, "Do you really think I will let you live happily ever after what you have done to me?" There was just something about the way he said it that sobered me up immediately. I pushed John away and just cried and cried. I tried ringing Early later, but from then on he never picked up. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard of such effective relationship destruction before. I guess that and your red hair proves your Irish heritage. Yeah. Talk now. Think later. So, you'd written off your marriage and decided to stay with John to live a life of luxury. Then what? Well, after about 3 days of Early not answering his phone, I needed more stuff from the house. John and I went round there when Early was at work. We couldn't get in as Early had changed the locks. John knew how to force one of the windows. There was hardly any damage. The next thing I know is the police turning up at John's house with a search warrant. Have you ever been arrested, Jen? It's not pleasant. Eventually, they had to let us go when I proved my name was on the title, and I explained that John was there as an invited guest. What interested them most was that Early had reported his pistol stolen. I didn't realize the significance at the time, but I certainly did later. They didn't find it at John's house, of course. Neither of us touched it. Wow! Remind me never to upset Early, Sue. That was just the start. 3 days later, our old company served John with a lawsuit because they'd lost the Melrose account. Somehow Melrose found out about the affair and, being a heavy Christian, acted quickly and decisively. They were going to sue me as well, but couldn't as I was an employee. As a partner, John was fair game. At first, John wasn't worried, thinking he would be covered under his professional indemnity insurance. That particular hope lasted another 3 days. Willful negligence, they called it. John was breaking the company's anti-fraternization policy at the time of our relationship, so they left him out in the cold. How much was the suit for? $4 million. It only took John 2 weeks to negotiate that down to 2.5, though. He decided to settle out of court. The trouble was he didn't have that kind of money handy. Even after he totally refinanced the house, he was still a bit short. He said he had a few million in long-term investments, but that it would take him a few months to get hold of it. That's when he made me feel guilty. He pointed out that our affair was all my idea, and so I felt obliged to help him out. I wasn't surprised that there was only half our money left in my account. I gave John the whole $275,000 left in them. Well, not gave, lent. We drew up an agreement and everything. John put his copy in the safe, and I hid mine in my suitcase. Tell me, Sue, did Early file for divorce? No, strangely not. Luckily, I checked, and he'd canceled my car insurance and registration, but nothing about a divorce. I was going to wait for him to do it, so he had to provide the money. I know there's more, Sue. You didn't just stay with John happily ever after. Don't joke like that, Jen. No, I can't recall John and I ever being intimate after that. Every time we went to try, he got this blinding headache. I mean, I thought it was women that did that. I think it was a psychological response for him. He'd started to associate intimacy with me with bad things happening. It suited me, though. Being with John by that stage was making me feel ill. Did you have any contact with Early after that? Only when I left an angry message on his phone after my mom rang. I didn't know it, but John was speaking badly about Early to my friends. I suppose in self-protection, Early contacted all my friends and family. It was terrible, Jen. He'd not only played them the recording of my confession and later outburst, but shown them a video as well. I didn't know, of course, but when we'd rung Early from the pool, he'd been filming us. I've never seen it personally, but apparently it was clear what was happening. I'd turned Early into someone I didn't recognize. So how did your mom take it? Not only my parents, but most of my other family and friends disowned me. You included, Jen. I know, Sue. I felt upset. Not only for what you'd done to Early, but the way you'd lied to me and deceived me as well. You know, lying to me that you were giving me the 2 days off as a reward, when all along it was to get me out of the office in case Early rang. Yes, I'm sorry about that, Jen. It's no longer a problem for me. So where did that leave you? Without any family or friends, with only having John for companionship. It got worse. Just about every time we went out to a restaurant or coffee shop, we met someone we knew. They either ignored us or were downright rude. One of our old neighbors even showed their disgust at me, right in the restaurant. After a while, we stopped going out. You should have known that Early was always popular, Sue. Yes, I know, but none of it was my fault. Well, after that, I unwisely got drunk again, rang Early, and was very unpleasant. It turned out that he recorded the call. The next thing I know, I've got a restraining order against me, not allowed within 300 feet of Early or the house. So there you were, John and Sue against the world. Yeah, paradise. It wasn't long after that the phone calls started. John started going to bars on his own. Just about every night some girl or other would ring asking for him. One woman even left a message saying she had to cancel their appointment that night. It was humiliating. He couldn't be intimate with me because of the headaches, but it didn't stop him seeing other women. Yes, I can see that wouldn't make you happy. Did you have another job by then? No. I had one interview. One. I missed it when my car engine seized on the way there. They do say bad luck comes in threes. You're not wrong. The third one came that night. I'd decided to follow John when he went to the bar that night, confront him with his behavior. He just sat and drank alone all night. I wasn't fooled, though. I figured he'd seen me following him and was putting on his best behavior. Jenny, I'd never thought of it before. But when you go to live with someone you've had an affair with, there is no trust. You both know you are unfaithful. Without trust, all relationships are doomed. Listen to me, the wise woman. The best sight is hindsight. Was the third one the fire? Yes. When I got back to John's place, it was a heap of smoldering ash. We moved into a motel and used what little money we had left to buy some clothes and other essentials. John couldn't remember who he'd insured with, so he rang around. Eventually, he found the one, and they sent an assessor round. John became very angry when the guy said they weren't going to pay out as it was a fraudulent claim. Apparently, John claimed it was a brick house with a sprinkler system to get lower premiums. It was all wood, and I never saw a sprinkler system. The guy also said that from the remains of the fuse box, they could tell the fuses fitted were way too high in amperage. John yelled and threatened them with lawsuits, but they stuck to their guns. They pulled out a copy of the online application John filled out. John told them he'd never taken out insurance online in his life, so they pulled out a copy of the confirmatory letter they'd sent. John told them that as it was from a company he didn't deal with, he'd thought it was junk mail and thrown it away. Wow. Now that is bad luck. What did you do then? Well, what choice did we have? John told me that it would be at least 6 months before he could access his long-term investments. He talked me into going after Early's house so we had somewhere to live. Poor Early mustn't have known what hit him. I mean, 2 experienced lawyers attacking him. He didn't stand a chance. I filed for divorce asking for the house and 75% of everything. I needed the house, but the 75% was just a strategy to get him to settle quickly. We knew all the methods to get it fast-tracked and within 3 weeks served him with an order to vacate the house. Oh, Sue, Early wouldn't have liked that. No, don't remind me. I had a real bad conscience about it. After all, it was my mistake that started all this in the first place. But you never got the house, did you, Susan? No. The night after the quit property order was served on Early, I tried to break off with John. He was still seeing other women and refusing intimacy. He agreed that we should part ways. When I asked him about the money he owed me, he just laughed. He asked me if I had proof that he owed me money. Of course, both copies of the agreement went up in smoke. Then, to make matters worse, he told me there were no long-term investments and he was completely broke. I did warn you that he was dishonest, Susan. I know. I regret not listening to you now. I know you've always been a good judge of character, Jenny. What happened then? Well, I went after him in anger. I was going to hurt him, but he struck me, knocked me unconscious. Ah, that's what happened, is it? He got 3 to 5 years, didn't he? Yes, and it was deserved. I can't believe he fooled me so badly. I thought I'd always been a good judge of character. Enough about me anyway. Have you seen Early lately? How is he? You know, I've sent him a few letters asking if now that we are even he can forgive me and take me back. He never replies. Can't say I blame him, really. Well, that's part of why I came to see you, Susan. Early just got married again. While Sue was trying to digest that shocking news, a man in uniform came over to the table. Okay, ladies, visiting time is over in 5 minutes. When the bell goes, the rules are that the prisoner remains seated while the visitor leaves, okay? Both girls nodded their understanding. Jennifer felt compelled to clean up some issues. You really have to admire what Early did, don't you? His boss is a golfing buddy of Melrose, so he introduced them. Early played them the recording of your confession. He also broke into John's house and used his phone to cancel his insurance policy, then used John's own computer and credit card to take out a new one with a different company. He put bigger fuses in the night he set fire to the house. Susan was shocked and silent, so Jenny continued. For the record, John's headaches were caused by Early swapping his medication for his father's nitroglycerin angina tablets. Your car engine seized because someone put mothballs in your fuel tank, and those phone calls from women were all the girls in Early's office. Finally recovering, Susan gasps, "He wouldn't do that." Not my sweet, gentle Early. Yes, but the person you created would. Also, for the record, you are here because you weren't satisfied with totally humiliating your loyal husband. You just had to threaten to take his house and just about everything else off him as well. A lesson for next time, Susan. Even a mouse will come out fighting if you back it into a corner and give it no escape route. How do you know all this, Jen? Actually, the fraudulent insurance policy idea was mine. He just wanted to cancel the old policy, but I convinced him that would look suspicious. At that moment, the bell rang and Jennifer struggled to her feet. Susan stared at her swollen belly that until this moment had been hidden by the table. What is that? Oh, I forgot. Susan, I'd like you to meet Early Jr. Goodbye, Susan. As she was hustled back to her cell, Susan's mind was in turmoil. All this time, she'd thought of her prison time as almost justified payback for the wrongs she'd done her husband. Early, her quiet, gentle mouse. Now she'd found out that everything that had happened to her was orchestrated by a man whom she'd once thought of as being completely free from malice. Well, the mouse had roared all right. She cast her mind back to what led here. Susan was the first to admit that her final downfall was a masterful piece of manipulation by Early. After her release from hospital, she'd finally fully realized how she'd wronged him. Leaving a message begging to let her talk to him, she'd been pleasantly surprised when he'd invited her over that afternoon. Driving straight to her old house, she'd walked up to the front door in a buoyant mood. Noticing a large sign on the wall next to the door with an insulting message about her, she'd lost her temper again. Shouting, "I'll get him!" she'd barged in the front door. Early was standing in the lounge, and as soon as she walked in, he threw something towards her. On reflex, she caught it and was very surprised to find herself holding a pistol. Her gaze was focused on the gun when it flew from her hand as Early struck her outstretched arm with a heavy curtain rod. She watched, frozen in shock, as Early picked up the pistol in his gloved hands and with no more expression than if he'd been squashing a snail, fired twice into the wall opposite the front door. Susan pleaded guilty in court. She knew the physical evidence of her fingerprints on the gun, and the holes in the wall, combined with their neighbor's testimony of her final words, would lead to an inevitable ruling, not to mention her breaching a restraining order. Maybe, deep down, she accepted that by being unfaithful to Early and then treating him poorly, she'd really made terrible mistakes and deserved what she got. Back in her cell, the full impact of Jen's revelations finally sank in. She'd been almost ready to accept her punishment for her infidelity and humiliation. Now she knew that he was responsible for the complete destruction of her career, her complete financial ruin, and the destruction of her social standing. Slowly, remorse turned to anger and a firm resolve. In 9.5 years, that pair had better watch out. Sleep came very slowly that night in her cell. She looked back on her life a year ago and her life today. She vowed never to misjudge a mouse ever again. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.